It bothers my eyes, and I would much prefer it on the big screen and see everybody, you know.
Oh, right.
But the sound is terrible. And at first I thought it was my computer, but it's not. What other communities are you involved with? As with your firm, with King and Bean? No, it will. It's a new phone.
Thanks, Fred. Dan, okay, great, thank you.
It looks like a new phone, is it?
It certainly rings differently.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start. Welcome to the Village of Rybrook Planning Board meeting. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, my name is Rob Goodman. I'm a chair of the Planning Board. Also in attendance tonight are my fellow board members, Donald Crum, Scott Mendelson, Matthew Retner should be joining us shortly, Jeffrey Richmond, and Amy Schoen. Also in attendance tonight is our village attorney, Robert Zitt, our superintendent of public works, Michael Nowak, and our village planning consultant from Hardesty and Hanover, Malcolm Simpson. We also thank, in spirit, Tara Orlando, our board secretary, who does all of our minutes, and all the other stuff that needs to be done to get us here every Thursday. Let's see, our board minutes and videos of our board sessions can be found on the Rybrook website. As you can also find our rules, and I recommend all professionals to review our rules before they begin prosecuting their applications before this board, as there are deadlines and various things that are set forth in the rules that can be helpful to you. Oh yes, David Heiser. I always forget David Heiser. Last but not least, he is our liaison from the Board of Trustees, and he sits in our meetings and is very helpful in providing input on how the board looks at things and takes our gripes, listens to our gripes. So anyway, thank you for that. We don't have any minutes today, but we do have some applications. Our first application is 900 King Street. And as I understand it, it's for an application for an extension of a steep slopes and wetlands permit. Let's hear from the podium. What's going on with the project?
Good evening. My name is Tony Veneziano, here on behalf of the applicant. They've been working with Chris regarding a pilot agreement for months.
That microphone is not on.
Yeah.
It's not on?
Yeah, you're gonna have to speak.
A little louder?
Yeah.
So they've been working with Chris and the mayor regarding the pilot agreement. They go back and forth. That seems to be the impasse, and then we have to go back to the, is it the Architecture Review Board regarding their approval of the plans. We'd gone back and forth. This was in the Zoom days. I must have been on 4 or 5 different Zoom calls with the ARB. There was some value engineering going on with the architects, but that's sort of ready to go as soon as they can finalize this tax structure and give us the go-ahead.
So pending resolution of that issue, what do you say has been done? Has the ARB any submissions been done to the ARB?
No, we're
Nothing.
waiting for the resolution of the pilot transaction. Then Peter will let the team go to deal with the ARB, and then we're really done. We just have to keep these approvals alive until he's ready to move forward.
Right.
And both sides know that. You know, we're with the village board, they grant us an extension of the site plan through, I think, March or April of next year. They did that in August.
So the Board of Trustees has already granted you an extension relating to the site plan to what was the date?
March 15th, 24.
Okay,
They have 6 months. It's
Right.
twice yours.
right. Rob, as I understand it, we have it within our discretion to grant up to a year of an extension. Any prognosis, David, if you want to weigh in on this, if you have any information, that would be helpful on what we can be looking forward to over the next year? Is there any time frame that the parties are
All I can
contemplating?
say without breaking any confidences is that the last proposal was made by us to the applicant. We not heard back.
Okay,
When was that?
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, because we had, because I'm not involved in that, and I speak to
Right.
Peter every now and again, and when we spoke maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, he was talking.
It was less than that.
Yeah, so this is your counter to whatever, okay. So they're having discussions. At some point,
okay.
someone's gotta move.
Doesn't sound like you have much control over the situation.
No, that is, we
Can't
can
whip the
stipulate
du-
to
you can't
that.
whip
I
them
have
in the shape.
zero control over that.
Chair,
Yeah.
It's basically Mayor Klein, myself, Chris, and Mr. Duncan. That's the.
I see. Okay. Okay. Board members, do you have any questions for the
Don't know
applicant?
what to
Does
ask.
the project have financing and whatever to get going if,
Yes,
yeah.
he has, yes. A strong partner, and he's strong.
Okay. Well, I think the issue for us is how long an extension we want to give them, and, you know.
That seems
I-
to have been taken out of our hands then.
Well, we have a little bit more, you know,
Well,
the Board of Trustees can give them 6 months, we can give them a year. I think under the circumstances, so that the parties don't have to come back, obviously it's very much up in the air, what the schedule is gonna be.
What would be the harm in giving them a year?
I don't think there would be a harm, and I'm inclined to advocate that.
I'm sorry, I
Uh,
missed your,
I said, what would be the harm in giving them a year?
I don't think anyone
there's
is-
probably no harm. My inclination, however, would be to do whatever in tandem the village board does.
I think it's probably likely that even when the project commences, that the applicant is gonna be back asking for an extension in March. That would be my guess.
It'll
and
just
so-
avoid, I mean, the truth is, until that's resolved, I'll just be standing here with the same
Right.
silly look on my face.
But
saying,
even if it is
I understand what you said.
today,
Yeah.
and you were able to commence work,
Well, we'll have to go take care of the architecture review board,
Yeah.
get our financing to get, we'd have
yeah,
work to do.
by the time you actually break ground and you actually begin the substantive part of the project, it could very well be that, you need to come back for extensions of one sort or another, so. Does that make sense to everybody? Just to save them a trip and save us some time too.
Is there a legal reason I could not ask for the extension in writing?
They
I submitted a letter.
They did.
No, I don't mean that. Without making an appearance. I mean, is the appearance compulsory?
Well, usually you want to hear from the applicant. It's typically based on the circumstances and whether or not, good cause is shown to afford the extension.
Yeah.
So,
It's actually a good.
We're not gonna
process.
take this for granted. I mean, this is a significant extension. If you were not to extend it, it would,
Yeah.
I
well,
also think the better practice is probably for the board to hear.
just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I myself didn't really know what the status was of the project, so I think it's helpful to at least be on the same page as everybody else. Okay, can I have, do we need a resolution for this, or can we, okay. Yes, well, you can summarize it. Pertinent part.
Okay. Resolution entitled The Approval of a Request for an Extension of the Steep Slopes Permit and Wetland Permit for Property at 900 King Street. Whereas on behalf of the property owner at 900 King Street Owner LLC submitted a request to the Village of Rybrook Planning Board dated August 3rd, 2023 for a one-year extension, whereas a previous extension had been issued, and now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board of the Village of Rybrook hereby approves it was 1
One-year
year,
extension.
correct, a 1 year extension of the steep slopes permit and wetland permit, with that to expire September 8th, 2024. Motion.
Yeah, motion and a second?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, guess call the roll, Mike.
Mr. Crum?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Mendelson?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Richmond?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Schoen?
Yes.
Yes. Chairman Goodman?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, good luck to all concerned, and hopefully it'll move forward soon.
Thank you for your patience. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your appearance. Okay, our next item is 105 Lincoln Avenue.
Good evening, I'm John Ferraro. I'm the architect of record for this project, and these are the owners, Erin and Miriam. So we are here before the planning board to introduce this project. We are also required to go before the zoning board for a variance
Right.
because we are encroaching on the buffer,
Yeah,
the front yard buffer.
a question about that. There's no way to maybe avoid the variance based on maybe a revision of the plans. Would anyone be interested in that, or?
Well, no, because to do that, we would have to remove the covered area that,
You want?
I don't know how much more eloquent I
yeah, I
can
was
be.
looking at
So
it.
right now, the current dimension to the buffer is the corner of the house. So we can't even reduce the size of it.
Yeah,
We're
there's
at,
no way
we're
to
at
do
the 35 feet.
Right, okay.
So,
Well, why don't you just walk us through your project?
Sure.
And then we'll.
so this is the house. This is 105 Lincoln Avenue. These stairs right here, that I'm leaning on with my mouse, are there now. They're just being replaced. And then we're providing a few extra steps to get down to this patio area here. And on that patio will be covered by this roof. All right, now if I go, give me a minute, put my glasses on. If we look at this from the top, we can see it right here. That's the new covered roof that's extending out. That's the roof that's creating the encroachment into the
The
buffer.
overhang.
Okay. I don't know, did you get a copy of the site plan? I sent it.
Yeah,
Okay, so on that site plan in red, it shows and let me see if I can call that up. On that site plan in red shows the buffer. So this is what's happening here.
yeah,
Okay. So right now, where you see this elevation marker 148, 108, that's 35 feet. That's the corner of the house. That's
Mhm.
so even if we come out 1 inch, we're in the buffer.
right.
Is the patio existing, or is it just, is the patio proposed?
The patio exists, does it not?
So it's just the covering?
It's just the covering, yes.
Right. Right,
So
Malcolm.
question, your patio exists
Mm-hmm.
currently and you're not touching the patio,
Correct.
but your overhang is extending a couple of feet forward.
The overhang is being created completely. It doesn't exist.
How much of that? About 5-6 feet if I remember?
Yeah.
And that's what's causing the encroachment?
Correct. That's correct.
But the slab itself doesn't cause encroachment?
I was told it's the covering. I wasn't told it was the slab.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
Zoning board-
determination by the building inspector,
Yeah, the
but,
building inspector's determination is calling out I mean, I could read, you want me to read to you the determination?
Mhm.
I'm not the building inspector, and it's not my interpretation,
Yeah.
but my personal feeling, or my personal professional feeling, is that that patio's already encroaching into that front space, whatever it is, 8 feet, 10 feet, or whatever it is. So adding an awning, I mean, you already have impervious on the ground, so typically impervious over impervious is a negative, because you're not increasing it, so I don't understand
Wait,
how.
so there's
I
a
don't
CO,
either.
there's a CO for the existing patio that's already into the buffer?
I would assume so.
But
If
this,
we could avoid the zoning board, I'd be a very happy man.
That'd be a conversation with Steve.
I think we wish we could, but unfortunately don't have the jurisdiction to do it. You can send it on.
And I could talk to Steve, and then if we're able to work it out, we work it out.
Yeah, the thing is that if you can't work it out, then it wastes more time. Yeah.
No, my recommendation would be, if the board's gonna be inclined to refer to zoning,
Right.
do the referral.
Yep.
And in the meantime, let office
I think that makes, I think
people
that makes
talk
sense.
and
Makes a lot of
see
sense.
if we're on the
Makes
same
sense,
page,
because-
because if we could
It ma-
resolve this, we
right.
could resolve it and off it goes. But
Right.
if we can't, at least you're already referred.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was I was under the impression that that patio was new.
but the scenic highway thing is more about visual, visual buffer, right?
Correct.
Not about impervious.
No.
So it is more, I mean, not to be a stickler, it is more visual than a slab.
Correct.
that may have been the way the building
may be
inspector
what he
looked at it.
Yeah.
But,
So this is the view, this would be the view from Lincoln. So this is what's causing the,
right. I mean, it's a bulk requirement. It's not really a visual.
I think it's adding to the attractiveness
It's a
of the
bulk
house.
requirement within the,
Yes.
It's a
within
bulk,
the-
yeah, it's a bulk
I mean,
requirement.
it is relating to a visual issue, but
It's
pretty-
unique to the scenic
Let me
overlay,
correct
not
myself.
just the zoning
Actually,
district.
may I correct myself, please? The roof itself is encroaching 5 feet, not 6.
It's encroaching what?
Encroaching 5
5
feet,
feet.
5 feet 3 to be exact.
Ah, okay.
well, as I understand the scheduling, our next meeting would be October 12th, and the zoning board would be meeting October 3rd.
Correct.
So if you don't go to the zoning board, you still have a public hearing here, and we deal with it as a planning issue.
Okay.
If you do have to go before the zoning board, the chances are the zoning board will resolve it in advance of our meeting. So either way, you're gonna be back before us,
Sure.
and we'll be able to make a determination at that time.
I would just ask that, I don't, this gentleman's name here?
Michael?
Michael, before I go through the laborious process of doing the zoning board application, if you can
Just
get me
talk
that.
more.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay,
Okay.
and anything more than that? Yeah, so that's that. Any
Okay.
other questions for me about the
Any
project?
questions, the applicant, about the substantive aspects of the project? No. Malcolm, are there any planning issues other than what we've discussed?
apart from what we discussed, apart from, that one issue,
Just as to quickly go over the letter, I think that the only major issue was the scenic overlay setback. Are there any landscaping elements that are proposed as a part of this application?
Yeah, we were planning on bringing in low shrubs right here.
Okay, so if those can be added to the plan, they should be shown on the plan. In addition, do you have a planting schedule? Are you identifying them by species?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so that needs to be added to the plan. And then just for verification, are you proposing to remove any trees as a part of this application? Okay, good to know.
Okay. All right, I guess, yeah, read the referral motion.
All right. Referring a site plan application to the Rybrook Zoning Board of Appeals for consideration of variances at property located at 105 Lincoln Avenue. Whereas pursuant to the building inspector's notice of disapproval dated September 12th, 2023, the following variance is required for the proposed plans. A 29.4-foot scenic roads overlay district vegetative buffer setback variance where the minimum required scenic roads overlay district vegetative buffer setback is 35 feet pursuant to code. And whereas the applicant wishes to apply to the Rybrook Zoning Board of Appeals for that variance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Rybrook Planning Board hereby refers the application listed herein to the ZBA for a determination on the above variance, along with any additional variances deemed necessary.
I have a motion, a second, to approve the resolution referring.
Second.
Okay, and Malcolm, we have a public hearing.
Well, I have to vote on this resolution first.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that.
So, Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just take a moment, just to acknowledge something? So I'm in this business for 37 years. Thank God, it's been great. This is a fantastic municipality. I work all up and down the East Coast in the cities, and when I have an application with Rybrook, Tara is gold, Steve is gold. I call people, they call me back, and I just want to commend you for that.
Well,
That's lovely to
commend
hear.
our staff. I
I'm
mean,
commending everybody.
they,
I mean,
That's
it's just-
wonderful
they make
to
us
hear.
look, they make us look good. What can I say?
Can I get back to me tomorrow?
And he will. Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
You too.
Okay, if you can just, yeah. Public hearing schedule.
Resolution setting a public hearing regarding site plan approval for 105 Lincoln Avenue. Whereas Erin Moran-Atkin and Miriam Lagunas-Fitta have submitted applications for approval of a site for roof over entry and den entry, slate patio and stairs on the property located at 105 Lincoln Avenue, SBL 135.14-1-12 on the Town of Rye tax map in the R12 zoning district.
You can
Skip that part?
all that
I'll
stuff.
skip
Get
that
to
part
the
next
get to the meat of it.
Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the Village of Rybrook will hold a public hearing on October 12th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the Village Hall. Be it further resolved, the applicant is hereby directed to comply with section 25040 of the Village Code regarding notification of the public hearing.
Okay. Can I have a motion, a second, to adopt the
Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you guys back next month. Good luck with dealing with the zoning issue. And our last application is Hidden Pond Drive.
I was just looking here. I think you can see this over here. Like, even besides that, like, here's the, I don't see.
Get resolved?
see,
Okay.
Like, some of these houses you can see.
That's fine. Do it.
Because it's on a hill too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's trees there. I know right.
I thought maybe they were down here, like one of these.
I can't hear a word you're saying.
Be it resolved.
Oh.
Be it resolved is fine. Unless there's something substantive about a precondition.
Get it.
Obviously. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Joseph Riina, the Principal Site Design Consultants. With me tonight is Clifford Gavert. He is the President of the Homeowners Association at Hidden Falls. We're here tonight for a steep slope permit. The project entails replacing a failing timber railroad tie wall, which is on common property adjacent to number 23. There's a picture of the
Yeah,
wall on
I saw the picture. It looks like a wreck. I agree.
Yeah.
What's the what's the function of the wall? I noticed it's sort of everything slopes up.
Yeah, there's
After
quite an
that?
elevation difference there,
I see,
so
yeah.
it's taking up that elevation difference. And over time, with erosion due to surface runoff, it has caused the wall to rot and also start to cavities to develop behind the wall. So it's needs to be replaced. The proposal is to replace it with precast concrete masonry units, a ready rock type wall. Again, we have a picture of that identified on the plan. The disturbance of steep slopes as delineated on the plan is 1,115 square feet of slopes greater than 25%. So, as part of this plan, there's a drainage issue which is occurring, and it's causing an effect on number 23. So we're also taking care of that by putting in a drainage structure and some pipe and tying it into the existing drainage system. There are no trees that are proposed to be removed for this project. All the existing trees are all indicated on the plan, and we're not any of the trees.
It doesn't look by the picture there, it doesn't look like there's any screening relating to the
No,
wall itself.
There's none. There's none. We will be reinstalling a post and rail fence above the wall as exists now. It'll, of course, be a new one, but
Same type of thing.
the same type of fence. And that's also, you can see that in that picture that it exists now, and we show it on our section detail of the wall. We have it represented on there also, as well as on the plan.
Any questions? Malcolm, any? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I noticed our planning consultant had asked about the fence. And I noticed it's a two-tier wall now, right?
Right.
The lower tier looks like, on the left-hand side, as we look at it, it looks like it to be about 4 feet on the left side. Are you gonna need a fence on that lower tier?
No, we just need it on the upper tier.
You sure?
Yeah.
'Cause I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason, I mean, we're, we're about, whatever it is,
The same, looks like they're each gonna be about
Yeah,
4 feet
they're
tall.
all- These are gonna be about 4 feet tall, but
Right.
from up above, that's where residents have access to it. So that's a rear yard to units up there.
isn't there a drive below?
What's
A
below?
road?
Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah.
the road?
This area here is all open lawn area.
So there's no way any child or animal could get between the walls?
They could if they did some climbing, climb those rocks and whatnot. So
Like,
it's
for
not-
instance, over from the right side? There's
Yeah,
no
that's
way
a-
for them to
that's
get
a
in from
vegetated
there?
area, that's all natural vegetation on that area. I mean, it's possible,
Okay, I mean,
anything is
just-
possible.
It just seemed to me with the two-tier, with, say, 4 and 5, or, whatever, 6 feet on each wall, I think, right? You're gonna base it on the field conditions. First of all, let me back up and say, this is a great project. I'm glad you guys are undertaking it. It looks like a great, addition to your neighborhood. But if you're doing it, I'm just saying, obviously, your community cares about safety as much as, the rest of Rybrook. So I'm just putting it out there that you
Okay.
may wanna look at that, maybe it'll come up.
Okay, I mean, I'll definitely consider that with the applicant and see what they would like to do.
Yeah, I mean, probably not the whole wall, because it seems like it tears down.
Right.
But that corner looks like it's,
Yeah.
4 feet, which is, something getting over that is obviously not, not good.
Certainly.
Usually the building department requires a fence or asks for a fence on anything over 30 inches. So just be mindful of that. Maybe you take that into consideration on the lower wall. Because not if, it's when.
Right. Certainly.
Any other planning considerations here?
They already mentioned, we were curious whether or not any trees were gonna be taken down as an element of this. Sounds like they're not. Obviously, they need a steep slopes permit, for the project. The issue of the fence, is of interest to me. It sounds like the building department may comply them to have a fence along each of the walls, anything that is above
Even the lower.
a certain height,
the
yeah.
4 foot.
My other question, the fence is included in the detail of the larger of the retaining wall itself. I'd like to see a detail of the fence being proposed to be used as a separate detail on the plans, just so that we have a more detailed detail of that fence. The chairman already brought up the question of screening. It doesn't sound like they're proposing any plantings. It's probably not necessary, in which case that question can be ignored.
Okay. All right, unless there are any other questions, let's schedule the public hearing. So I think there's a public hearing resolution, Malcolm, and we'll get this on next month's schedule.
I'll give you the abbreviated version
Yes.
this time. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, just want to say a few words,
Oh,
if I may.
oh,
address
yes,
the board.
please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cliff Gabers. I am the president of the HOA.
Thank you
The
for
one
coming.
thing that I wanted to emphasize to the board, and I'm a little bit concerned that you're now going to have another public hearing, if we have another interval heavy rain, what happens if it collapses in the interval? I mean, this is rotted out. I would not.
How long has this condition persisted?
This was first noted back in '22,
Right.
at the end of the year,
Right.
when we started this process,
Right.
and it is getting dragged out. And I'm really concerned that, like if Hurricane Lee were to go another 500 miles east, we would be talking about, a landslide there. This really, I really urge you to move this along expeditiously. Okay.
Well, I mean, we have to have a public hearing as per the code. Our public hearings are scheduled 30 days in advance.
Even in extraordinary circumstances?
I think reasonable minds may differ whether it's extraordinary or not. We have to be concerned about other applications making the same point and being in a position of having to weigh interests between and among various neighbors, which would probably be an unfair exercise of judgment. So unless it can be shown that there is imminent danger, that things are actually falling off now, I would rather not have to make those judgment calls and pursue our procedures as they've been laid out. And they've applied pretty much. I can't recall a time when we've expedited a public hearing, even in projects where there were very urgent, arguably urgent issues. So I understand your concern, but I would rather follow our procedures.
Noted and exception taken. Thank you.
I just have a question. The other side of the both sides of this fence property of Hidden Falls?
Yes.
Okay.
Now therefore be it resolved, the planning board of the Village of Rybrook will hold a public hearing on October 12th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in Village Hall, 938 King Street, Rybrook, New York, or in a virtual format as may be determined depending on public health concerns to be considered the above referenced application.
Okay, can I have a moved?
Second.
Mr. Crum,
Yes.
Mr. Mendelson,
Yes.
Mr. Richmond,
Yes.
Ms. Schoen,
Yes.
Chairman Goodman.
Yes.
Perhaps to help expedite it, consider getting all the engineering calculations to the village, because I understand some of these two-tier walls can get tricky with the way, and especially with the loading from the upper bank, the way all those things, sometimes the villages even had to go out for an independent engineer to look at things. So if you're trying to expedite it, just urge you to get all your, your background calculations in.
And we have found it takes the engineer a little bit of time sometimes, so.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it'll be plain vanilla, but sometimes they hire a consulting engineer
Right.
to look over.
I mean, the calculations are all done, so it's just,
Okay.
that's all together.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't know if I'm out of school, but that, trying to expedite it.
right, so the engineer hasn't seen this yet?
No, I don't know. I'm saying if you're the engineer, right?
Well, I mean, your engineer hasn't seen it yet?
No, our engineer has not reviewed it. Normally, building inspector does his review and then comes in front of the planning board, and then the engineer receives it. Because if the planning board then makes changes, Now, they just re-reviewed it, and we just spent money reviewing it.
Right.
So, but let us get those calculations, let's see where we're at, we'll go from there.
So we can't run them up, you don't advise running them on a parallel track?
Running what?
The review of the engineer, your engineer, and the planning board review?
That will be on a parallel track.
Okay.
Yeah, that is on a parallel track. Now that they schedule a public hearing, that's the design, that's where it's staying, so yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we'll see you next month. All right, our last item relates to the comprehensive plan. And, a resolution was issued, enacted by the Board of Trustees in, the middle of August, basically investing us with the task of reviewing the current comprehensive plan and making recommendations to the Board of Trustees as to whether or not we should commence a new process for revising the plan that's in place. I think the last plan is 10 years old. And in a discussion we had a number of months ago, which actually catalyzed this resolution from the Board of Trustees, I think the general consensus was that the comprehensive plan being 10 years old and many things happening since that time is worth reviewing and assessing what the goals of the plan were, whether we've met those goals. If we haven't met those goals, maybe, refashion them or find out why, and whether or not there are new objectives that maybe we should frame for Rybrook over the next number of years. Obviously, there have been many environmental changes that may or may not have been considered to the same extent they would be considered now. So what I wanted to discuss is how we wanted to proceed with that evaluation. Whether we would include it as part of our meetings as a session, and proceed along the lines that I think we discussed a couple of sessions ago, which was to have a session on what the current comprehensive plan articulates in terms of goals, have our consultants sort of really refine for us what we have to look at, and then have a discussion about assessing whether those objectives have been achieved, and then maybe have a session to discuss where we go from here. There are different ways that we can do this. We can do it as a board and simply set aside time the way we would set aside time for an application. We can do this outside of the meetings at other times that are convenient for everyone. We could have a small subset of members of the board work on this and then make a presentation to the board, larger board later. What's your sense in terms of mechanically, what the best approach you think to pursuing this? Any ideas?
Well,
And
goals are stated in it. I mean, I think the optimum would be to have everybody read it and be familiar with it. I think doing a subset of the 2 or 3 of us and then presenting to the board is not, it's gonna take a lot longer, because it's gonna become an essay kind of contest, and I don't think it serves its purpose. We could do it chapter by chapter. We could do it certain blocks by certain, I don't mean street blocks, but certain blocks of text per meeting. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot to think about. I think the first thing is to check out the stated goals in this plan and to make comments about whether or not those goals have been somewhat met, completely met, not met at all. I think that you will be establishing a base of information that way that you can focus your attention to, because if we've met the goals and we feel that the goals are good ones and we've met them, there's no further discussion about them. Those goals should remain. But if we see others that are partially met or not met, we have to then determine why they haven't been met, why they are only partially met. Is it a resource issue? Is it a staffing issue? Is it a environmental issue? What specifically do we focus on to see how we meet it, or should we meet it, or should we revise it, eliminate it, advance it? I think that's where you start. I think without that, you're going to be talking in circles.
Right.
And I think that, in my opinion, that would establish our base of operation, is going through the goals of this plan.
Are we gonna, I'm sorry, are we gonna look at more of like a quantitative thing to say?
Quantitative and qualitative.
Which means like some sort of resource. I mean, a lot of this is very statistical, like how many people live here, what's the has the density changed, has the income changed, has the
Right,
traffic
but
changed?
that's all part of the information feeding into the goals.
Right, but how do we know, how are we going to know? Are we gonna like commission somebody to like, at
Well-
30,000 feet, tell us the density is the same,
See,
the traffic's the
that's-
same?
I don't know the answer to that,
Yeah.
because we don't have that information in
Right,
here.
right.
Well, I think but I think if we evaluate a goal where statistical analysis is going to be required, that would be one of our,
That would
if we
be
don't
it.
do it ourselves, that
Right.
would be one of the recommendations we make
Right, there you go,
to the Board of Trustees,
Right.
that there are certain,
Right.
that in order for us to evaluate whether or not this goal has been achieved, we need to do a statistical analysis on how the demographics fall out
Right.
now.
But
So-
for instance, I've lived here 10 years. I could say, gee, it seems like there's a lot more traffic than there was before. There's a lot more traffic lights, but maybe I'm making it up. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how,
Well, that
Same
would
traffic
be-
lights.
that's just a
but-
perception though, right?
Same traffic lights, I can tell you,
Well, there's
but a lot more traffic.
Well, there's a new one where, that new development is, whatever,
Oh, you mean on King Street?
King Street.
Oh.
But whatever. I mean, the point is, I have a perception, but
Right. I guess my concern is very practical, because
Yeah.
this is a very big
exactly,
document.
exactly.
It would be nice to say, as homework, we just each review this document in full and then just come in next meeting and just hash out. But I think maybe to.
Not efficient.
I think to Amy's point, maybe what we should do, I mean, Amy, it looks like the table of contents here is helpful in defining what sections of the plan we should be focusing on.
Yeah, and there's
Maybe
a,
maybe that's what we can discuss.
section
now.
on vision and goals. The very beginning is introduction, vision, and goals.
Okay.
And it goes into a little bit of the history.
Yeah. But we don't have to go, we don't have to do it, as it's set out in the plan. We can pick out certain
Right.
sections of interest. So
Mhm.
certainly introduction, visions, and goals is something that we should look at the top. I'm not sure, to Don's point, the demographics are like Greek, because there's no way for us to
That's
judge
right. We can't
whether
know.
the demographic
Right.
evaluations of today would be different. So that would be something I think we would set aside.
Right,
Land use and zoning is obviously relevant to the planning board.
right.
Natural resources and stormwater management, because
Is
that
relative,
deals with the transportation systems. That certainly would be something to look at, but I don't think it's as high a priority as the other two. Infrastructure and utilities, that could go to to natural resources and stormwater management. We've had issues with sewer lines being tied into major sewer systems and what that means. So infrastructure and utilities sounds relevant.
Parks, recreation, and open space is applicable too.
Yeah, where's that?
That's on,
It's on the other side
of the page.
Okay.
Like the airport use has changed, right? Is the village in
The
litigation?
airport is
Is the
definitely
village
part
in
of it.
litigation with,
Infrastructure and utilities is part of it.
Yeah.
about like the,
Housing is part
some
of it.
big
I mean, it's,
private-
one thing leads to another.
Right.
section of the airport?
Commercial development is
under-
part of it.
Are expressing our interests in that.
Someone
It's
else
all
is, someone
relevant
else
to
is
planning.
litigating that? Or
All
we're
of
not?
Yeah, but
We're
but
involved,
for,
okay.
I'm thinking of for next month.
So
If we were going to not have to read the whole thing, but read certain sections of it and start a discussion along certain lines.
Can I ask a more macro question for those of us that don't really I guess my question is, what is the goal?
The goal is to evaluate whether or not we have met the goals in the comprehensive plan.
Because just looking at this briefly, it looks like a lot of information in everything but pages 4 and 5, which are the vision, goals, and policies, is just a lot of information about what exists. But like if you just focus on page 4 and 5 and you look at the goals,
That's what I said.
right? And then
Right.
I don't, is anything else really relevant?
Well,
The only
it's all relevant in terms of planning.
Sure.
It's all relevant in this was a document as a guideline to the village. Has the village been true to this guideline?
Right, but I guess my point is the entirety of this awesome, wholesome report was to get to pages 4 and 5, right? So that you could keep the goal in mind to preserve what is probably laid out as the parks, the open spaces, the homes, the traffic, everything like that. So wouldn't it just be more useful to go through 4 and 5? I guess I'm looking for our purposes and just say, okay, what in our analysis of a project are we keeping in mind all these things in 4 and 5, and what can we do better?
I would go 1 through 5. I would start with the introduction, vision, and goals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so I would,
just
I would,
going through like where the parks are and how the housing is and the traffic patterns, like that's all great to know as a background, but I guess I'm agreeing with you. I think
well,
What
but it is relevant in terms of housing, you see? You one thing leads to another in terms of a comprehensive plan. The whole point of it is comprehensive. Land use comprehended completely. You know, when you think of land use, you're not thinking of just parks and recreation. You're thinking of availability for commercial space, availability for residential housing. There's a lot to consider. But in the first 5 pages, it spells out what was the initial aspiration and how to get to it. What are the main topics within those goals? Please, correct me if I'm wrong.
So what I would recommend, I mean, you are right, and what I would recommend, because like you're saying, I think for at least for your initial purposes, trying to pick out certain chapters of what you're describing, the comprehensive plan, and reading them in isolation, because you can't realistically read this whole thing before next month and digest it and understand it. I think that there are also pitfalls with that in terms of plucking out, because they are so interrelated. So what I would recommend is to read pages 1 through 5, that's chapter 1, and then I would skip to chapter 13 and read it to the end.
Yeah.
Because many of the supplementary chapters are all leading to that, and chapter 13 picks up with future land use. That's what we want
Future land use, I
move
I
towards,
checked that
right?
out myself.
And then
Yeah.
chapter 1 is sort of the highlights
Right.
from that, but
Yeah.
you will want a little bit more information. So I would read chapter 1, I would read chapter 13. If as you're going through that, you pick out one or two goals that you are particularly passionate about or curious about, there is all of this other information you can look at. But, you know, to treat next month's meeting like a book club, and the first reading assignment is going to be chapters 1 and chapter 13, and we'll come together and we'll talk about it. And maybe the conclusion at that point is, you know what, based on the goals that we feel have not been satisfied, or the goals that have been left out of this plan, maybe it's important that we all read, you know, the housing chapter or the zoning chapter. But to start with chapters 1 and 13, and collaborate on our impressions from that.
I'm for that,
I
totally.
think that makes sense to me. I think that's doable.
Sounds good.
I think that's doable.
It's also much more achievable than trying to read
Well, right,
200
it's
pages.
too much.
Well,
It's too much.
That's
You
the
can't-
thing.
yeah,
It's-
you'd be
it's
all over the
impossible.
place. Right.
But I think we're also concerned about getting lost in the details, and I think that this is sort of a big picture project. So I agree. I think it's a very good suggestion. Reading chapters 1 and 13, and I guess just coming in with our own. I mean, look, personal experience is not to be disregarded. I mean, if you have a sense that like there are no parking spaces, or traffic is crazy, or buildings are being built in all which ways, that those personal observations are not irrelevant because in many respects, it's how a person comes to the village and sees what the village is like. That's the impression. That's the sort of, we have to be conscious of that kind of impression. So I agree with you, Malcolm. I think it's a good suggestion. I agree with you too. So, okay. Any other comments? I think that's reasonable homework. I'll go along with that. Any other ideas? No. All right. And I guess we can move to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
Aye.
As opposed to yes.